Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're watching Etcetera live on the Vibe. I'm your host, Kelly Barrett. And look who we have in the house today. It's Jeff Neill from Streetheart. Hey, Jeff.
How are you today, Kelly?
I am doing well. Doing well. I've been looking forward to this for a while. So what a year, huh?
It has been quite a year for sure. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me on the show, and of course for having Paul on last week. And I want to say hi to everybody that's decided to join us this afternoon, and let's have some fun. It has been quite a year, very profound year. I'm sure for every single one of us, we all have some pretty amazing stories to tell, and I have a few of my own actually. So
I'm counting on it, Jeff.
You're going to get
it. So, Jeff, I always like with a backstory just so we can get a more well-rounded idea of who you are aside from Streetheart. And so can you take us back a little bit, Jeff, to the defining moment for you when you were younger, the defining moment or situation where you realized without a shadow of a doubt that music was going to be your life path?
Well, I grew up in a very musical household. Both of my parents were musicians. They played music. They loved music. My father was a trained piano player, a conservatory pianist. My mom played guitar, and she basically showed me my first couple of chords. I remember records. We had a lot of recorded music in our house and a small little record player. My dad played a lot of classical, but my mom had a couple of records that I loved. Two of them were the Everly Brothers and Chubby Checker. I loved those two records. They were really, it was exciting music to me. It was kind of the beginning of, kind of a love for the excitement of kind of rock and roll music. I loved the classical music my dad played me, but that was my first introduction to sort of rock music. And then in February 9th of 1964, everything changed.
And how so?
Ed Sullivan Show and the Beatles.
No, there we go.
You just what my moment was. My mom told me, really aware they, some release, but we didn't know much about them. I knew nothing about them, being a kid living in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, with 2 channels and 1 radio station. And my mom said, Jeff, this Sunday the Beatles are going to be Ed Sullivan and all the girls are going to be screaming. And I kind of thought, it was Beatles like Bugs and girls would be going, oh. I had no idea what I was getting, and within a minute it just was like, Mom, that's what I want to do forever and ever.
Just like that, hey, it's just like a light bulb moment for you. And you are interesting fact about you, you're a notorious lefty. And so can you share how you adapted? I know you learned music on your mom's guitar. How did you adapt early on in a world where there was no left-handed guitars, and how did you navigate that as a young child?
Well, when you're, you kind of, my first guitar was the cardboard. It was a cutout, and drew knobs and strings on it. So, and I would stand in front of the mirror and play along with the radio. So I was quite happy to have anything that resembled guitar. I did start picking up my mom's guitar, started to learn how to play upside down. That's how I learned how to play. There are a few guitars that actually do play that way. Eventually I switched to traditional stringing the guitar the traditional way, but in the beginning I learned to play upside down. Took 1 guitar lesson, and when I was very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, the teacher tried to force me to play right-handed, and I got all upset and walked out and walked with my mom's guitar because I wanted to play left-handed. I said, I can play left-handed. I can do anything. I can do it upside down. That was my last guitar. Let me do what I wanted to do. They eventually bought me my own acoustic guitar. They went to Sears and bought me a Silvertone acoustic guitar, which I was able to string the correct way. I mean, by that, the low E string at the top of the guitar and the high E string at the bottom. So I retaught myself how to play chords properly. But I spent most of my early life playing right-handed electric guitars upside down until I was finally able to get you can sort of see them off here to the side, right?
I can see him. Do you want to pull him out, Jeff?
Oh,
the 75 Stratocaster, the baby.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
She's a beauty.
This is Frank. No, that's okay. We always guitars. We don't know what they start out. I'll tell you the story behind the name about this guitar. But anyways, this is a highly customized, well-worn 1975 Fender Stratocaster. For you guitar players out there, it has one master volume control, EMG pickups that I put in the 90s. They're loud, they're quiet, they're dependable. It's a hardtail Stratocaster, as you can see, like a Telecaster, so there's no tremolo arm. This neck was built by a gentleman from Saskatoon named Ed Roner. The original neck I broke I split it sort of in half when I fell off a stage in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan one night, trying to step back from a table I was standing onto the stage and missed the stage because the lighting director turned on the strobe light. And I smashed my face and guitar. And so I gave this guitar to Ed Roner, who and I said, can you do it in pure white? Because it was kind of an off-white color. And he took the finish off. I said, Jeff, this guitar is soaking wet. I need to stick it in the kiln for 6 months. So 6 months later, I got this guitar back in beautiful condition. And this has been my main guitar for, I'm trying to do the numbers, 46 years. Wow. And it's done every record. It's done all my sessions. It's been around the world with me. I have a number of wonderful instruments, but old Frank here is my number one. A lot of people know this story. The name Frank, in the 90s in Vancouver, I mean, Vancouver was a great music city, great recording studios, clubs, and a great nightclub scene. And all the biggest bands in the world used to come and record at Little Mountain. They were, whether they were being produced by Bob Rock or working with Mike Fraser or Bruce Fairbairn. Vancouver was was the place. Literally, that was the capital of rock and roll, at least for recording in the 90s. And one night, a very funny and drunken John Sykes from Whitesnake he comes in and he looks at my guitar and he goes, "Oh, look at that guitar! It's a Frankenstein." So and so he nicknamed the guitar. It was a Frankenstein, which became Frank, and he's been Frank ever since. And he is a bit of a Frankenstein. There's lots of bits and pieces, and there it is, my 1975 Stratocaster.
If that guitar could only talk, Jeff.
Well, I don't want that guitar to talk.
It would be bad. There'd be a few rock star moments as well as a few unmentionables, I'm sure. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about your musical ventures pre-Streetheart, if you don't mind.
Well, I played when we were kids growing up. Music really exploded sort of in the sort of the early mid '60s, obviously with the British invasion and just popular music. And we all, as kids, by that time, my family had moved from Sault Ste. Marie down to Preston, Ontario. Preston eventually joined, amalgamated with Galt and Hesper to become what is now called Cambridge. But it was Preston at that time. And all the kids in the neighborhood, we all got guitars and drums and instruments, and everybody wanted to play music. I think my first band, I got my first, I sort of gravitated towards bass guitar. And my dad bought me a bass guitar and a little amplifier when I was 11. And I got my first band with all the local neighborhood kids. I think my first band there was about 10 of us in the band. which got it got whittled down very quickly to four of us, and we called ourselves the Majestic Wrath. We thought that was a real cool name, and and John and Danny Wright, myself, and Keith Murch, who I continue to keep in touch with with these gentlemen. They're great friends. We used to play church dances and just kind of cutting our teeth playing music. When I was 16, my family moved back up to Sault Ste. Marie. My dad took a new teaching job up there, and I had gone back from bass guitar to electric guitar at about 14, and was started getting serious at about 16. Started playing in bands, playing high school dances, and started playing underage in little sort of country and western bars on the weekend, filling in and making some money to pay for gas for the car. And one of my dear friends still, Brian Armstrong and I, we played in a band called Bedward Tucket together. He joined up with some of the other local guys who went on the road, and me being a couple of years younger than everybody and still in high school, couldn't go. So the following year, Brian comes back and asks me when I'm 18, Jeff, do you want to go on the road? And and my parents, they agreed to that. It's kind of like, how about if I just go on the road for a year before I go to university? They're still waiting for me to go back to university. Anyway, so we started. We played in a club band together, Brian and I, and about a year and a half after that, we two wonderfully gifted, talented musicians that many of you know, Mick Delavie and Michael Sicoli, who were also schoolmates of ours. We got them to come out to Vancouver in 1976, and we formed a band called Shama, which was a very successful band throughout Western Canada in the late 70s. And it was about that time that we started hearing about this other really great band that was out on the prairies called Kenny Shields and Witness, which eventually Kenny, Daryl Gutall, and Ken Spider-Seneve would go on to form Streetheart with Paul Dean and Matthew Frenette. So we're leading up to that story now.
That's awesome. I'm from Regina, and I remember Streetheart, it literally just being a household name. And I was chatting with Paul last week, and I had mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it again because it's an interesting fact. In the Miss Teen Regina pageant, I had a friend whose mother worked there, and part of the questions for getting moved up to the second level and then on to Miss Teen Canada was they would show you a picture of Streetheart, and if you didn't know who they were, you were out. You were out of the running. And I thought, if that doesn't say that Streetheart was a household name, even way back then, that's a telltale sign right there. And so how do you come to join Streetheart, Jeff?
Well, as I was alluding to, I had heard about this great band on the prairies. Everywhere that Sham went, we were setting records in every bar. We said, you guys had the best week we've ever had, except for one band, Kenny Shields and Witness. It was like, oh, God, these guys. And what we heard, they said, well, you get this. I said, the place is packed. I said, yeah, but their crowd is a bit older and they drink more. So we thought that was kind of funny.
For sure.
Because we, as typical, and you know how this works, Kelly, we were playing 6 nights, 52 weeks a year. So very hard to see other bands. There was no internet, so there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no social media to see what other people were doing. But luckily, one night we were playing in Saskatoon, and they were playing at the Besborough Hotel. It was the summer of, I want to say, maybe 1976 or 77. And we were playing just down the street. We were playing a little club in Saskatoon, and the Besborough was only a few blocks away. So we ran down there on a break to watch them play, and I was just floored. They were so good. They were all such gifted players, and Kenny Shields was the greatest frontman I'd ever seen. He just literally owned the room. He could run a room like no other person I'd ever seen on a stage. He was as good as I'd ever seen, and at his prime. And I've always said this, that there is probably no other better front person on the planet than Kenny Shields.
Agreed. And I actually have so you played with Streetheart then, Jeff, from 1980 to 1984, and then
Yes.
you and then you toured a little bit with Australian artist Jimmy Barnes for what was started out to be a short time, and then it turned into a bit of a longer time. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was just going to go back a bit to this the Streetheart stuff. The drummer who was playing with Witness at that time was Bob Ego, and Bob and I were married to two sisters at that time, so we were kind of brothers-in-law. And and as most of you Streetheart fans know, Bob replaced Matthew Frenette in Streetheart on Quicksand Shoes, and and I would see Bob all the time for family functions and stuff. And I was always going, Bob, I want to get in this band. I mean, as great. And I mean, I knew it was pretty hard because John Hannah was such a great guitarist and a great songwriter. But in 1981, John, he just got so sick and he couldn't tour anymore. And he was just having a real hard time with so many things. And the band needed to continue. So they auditioned guitar players. And I was lucky enough to get an audition, and I was lucky enough to play well enough that the guys chose me. And I was talking to Daryl about this, and one of the things that they said, "Do you think you can travel and be on the road with this guy?" And I think that they all felt that I was the kind of guy that they could travel with and be on the road with, and that's an important thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got the gig. That began what was, it seemed like a long time, but really when you look back on it, I was in Streetheart only from 1981 till 1984. I mean, we recorded some great albums together. The Streetheart self-titled record is our all-time bestseller. It has, so many of our most favorite songs, and songs that I love dearly, and songs that I know our fans love dearly. And that was an incredible time in my life, and I learned so much from those men who taught me so much about playing music, how to record, and how to record well, how to write songs. That was an incredible learning experience for me. So now we're moving on to the Jimmy Barnes, this 1986.
Right. And so you toured with Jimmy, and it started out to be, I think, a 3-month tour, touring with ZZ Top, and then you kind of stayed over there for a little while.
Well, I had after Streetheart broke up in 1984. I was doing, session work, studio work. Was starting to kind of get there was a very good studio scene in Vancouver, and I was lucky enough to have some people who believed in my ability to come in and do that. So I was doing a lot of work there. In February of 1986, I got a call from Bruce Allen, who asked me if I wanted to play with Jimmy Barnes. I'd heard about Jimmy Barnes a couple of months previously, that Bruce had taken him on to represent him. Had seen him in Australia when Bruce went over to do some shows. He was managing Bryan Adams, as he still does, and Bryan was playing with the Police, and they were doing some shows in Australia. Bruce went down there, heard about Jimmy Barnes, and got together with Jimmy and offered to bring Jimmy over to North America to represent him, to break him in North America. And he put together a band at that time, which was Pat Stewart, who was playing drums with Bryan Adams, who's played with The Odds. And many of you know who Pat Stewart is. He's a wonderful drummer and an exceptional human being. And of course, the great Ab Bryant from Chilliwack and Headpins was playing bass. And another very talented Vancouver musician, Tom Lang, who played guitar and keyboards and background vocals. And I came in to replace a gentleman named Dave Amato, who was he was about to go on tour with Cher. And so Jimmy was down a guitar player. So that's when Bruce called me, and I managed to I got myself together very quickly in a few days, got down, drove down to Seattle, flew from Seattle to Kansas City, watched the band play, and the next day we drove to St. Louis and played that night. And I had a rehearsal in the dressing room. We hit the stage, and that was the beginning. And that was the beginning of the first 3 months, anyways.
Wow! And you, during that time, Jeff, you lived abroad. Like, you performed and lived abroad, Australia, London, France. What was that like?
Well, After we did this 3 month tour, and you know, I just thought it was just going to be, it just was going to go on. I wasn't even sure if Jimmy even liked me. He was, you know, we got along, but I just thought, I don't seem to be fitting in. And at the end of the tour, he came up to me and said, Jeff, how would you like to come over to Australia and work with my band in Australia? And I was just like, oh. And he said, it's just a quick little tour. He was just did a little 2 week tour down there. So I went down there with his tour manager. It was another friend of ours named Graham Lagdon and his wife. And we went down for a 2 week tour. And I played with Jimmy's band. And that kind of began a back and forth. I was flying back and forth from Vancouver to Australia a number of times every year. In 1991, I was divorced. I had been divorced for about 2 years. And Jimmy said, why don't you just move down here? He said, you're costing me a fortune to fly you back and forth. So why don't you move down? And that began the, you know, this was about, again, 1991, which is when I moved down there. We started working, we moved over to Europe, and we lived in the south of France. We spent a lot of time in London, England as well. A better part of 2 years in the mid-90s, 93, 94, 95, working at Breaking Jimmy in Europe. BMG was very committed to him at that time. And I was very grateful to have been part of all that amazing time.
I'm sure. What an experience, you know, to be able to travel like that, and to think that you weren't too sure that you were meshing, and then you get in,
No.
you were totally wrong because he just invited you to go out. And so back to Streetheart, Jeff, so you returned to Streetheart in 1997, if I'm correct. And how does that come to fruition?
Well, what had happened is actually it was in 1996. I took a bit of a break. And a bit of a holiday. I came back to Canada. I came back to Vancouver to see friends and hang out. And I got a call from Len Goddard, who was working at Sam Feldman's at the time, asking me if I wanted to do a show, a classic rock show at some place called Minnedosa, Manitoba, with Streetheart. And I went, oh, okay. And he said, well, we'll get paid and we'll fly you out there, and it'll just be a one-off thing. And it was very interesting because it was that the lineup was going to be Kenny, Spider, Daryl, and Matthew Fournette on drums, which was essentially the original lineup of Streetheart, and with myself tucked in there as well. So it was like I was thrilled to do it. I flew into Minnedosa. We were staying in Brandon at the time, and then we drove to Minnedosa on the day of the show and got there, and there's 17,000 people there. And I'm going, wow. You know, I mean, and this was sort of the beginning of this was the beginning of the upswing of the classic rock kind of thing. I mean, it really hadn't really even exploded yet. It was starting to. I mean, it was exploding. But it was the early days of it. And
right.
We were thrilled. We walked on stage, no rehearsal. And I remember going, I wonder how this is going to sound. And I said, it's going to be like the best hour of my life. And it truly was.
Yes,
it really was just, it's still one of the greatest shows that I've ever played, for the quality of musicianship. I mean, for the memory of it, for this, I mean, to see the fans and see people, there were literally men and women standing on the side of the stage with tears in their eyes. And they just, I think people were just enjoying the memory of it all, to see Kenny and this band up there just pounding out these tunes that they hadn't heard for so long. It was the first time that I had played with them in 13 years. And it felt like like we had just did a gig yesterday.
Right. And so then, Jeff, so you returned to Streetheart, and was it that show that kind of determined that we need to continue to do this?
Well, no. I mean, I was living in Vancouver. We were doing some shows. We went off and did. We do little 5-6 show runs with Kenny and Spider and myself. We did a whole bunch of shows. Nothing too it wasn't consistent, but we were doing all these shows, and it was kind of fun. I started working with Kenny again at the end of 2003, and by that time the band was called, Kenny was using Kenny Shields and Streetheart, and that's how that's the name that we were performing under at the time. And he asked me if I wanted to do a couple shows, and I said, yeah, sure. I was just kind of getting back on my feet again after recovering from some personal mistakes that we all have a tendency to make. So it was a welcome time for me to go back and play and just kind of get back out there playing again. And it was a lot of fun. It was different than from what we were doing before, but the fans, they love Kenny. He still had amazing pipes, and the band was fun. It was really a good band, and we were, we did good business. People really liked us. There was a lot of shows to be done. We were playing probably, typically between 30 and 40 shows a year. We did that right up until we lost Kenny in 2017.
Right. And, Jeff, the longevity of Streetheart it boggles the mind. Over this, amazing career has spanned, all these years, and 16 albums, 6 gold, 4 platinum, Juno Award for the most promising group back in 1980, which I think is kind of the understatement of the year. Streetheart was voted most popular Canadian act at the People's Choice Awards, inducted into the Western Canadian Hall of Fame in 2003, a couple of Amplex Gold and Reel Awards, Chimo Award from Music Express magazine. Yeah, wow. What one of those awards touched you and meant the most to you, Jeff? And can I ask why?
Well, as you were talking about that, all those achievements that we had, and the longevity of this band, not only our band, but all of our colleagues, that all comes down to the quality of fans that we have. Are we a great band? We're a great band. We have great players. We've written some great songs, and again, not just myself, but all of our contemporaries. But we have enjoyed the best fans of any musical generation ever. They're still with us, and we are just so grateful for that. So to answer your question, I think the award that means the most for me is the Hall of Fame award, because I think what it represents quality over a long period of time. It represents that you have a body of work. You have songs that have stood the test of time, that people still want to hear, they still get played. And I'm so grateful. I still hear our songs played on the radio, and I get the same buzz every time that I did the first time that I heard What Kind of Love Is This on the radio.
Right. Hey, speaking of fans, Jeff, your fans are loyal, and there's a bunch of them commenting here, and they're saying hello from Newfoundland.
Is that Howie?
Hey, Jeff and Kelly. Pardon me. That's Howie. Howie says happy Sunday, guys, from all of us. And hi, Howie.
Isn't that nice?
Jeff's the man.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Rob Steele says that you're the best left-handed player in Canada. Daniel Defoe is saying, wow, happy Sunday. People are just tuning in from all over the country, which is awesome. And you had just mentioned hearing yourself on the radio, and I had a question that I was going to ask you about that. It was, where were you the first time you hear yourself with Streetheart on the radio, and what was that like?
I think the first time I heard Streetheart on the radio, I would say that we were driving one night late in Eastern Canada. Like, the record had come out, and it was the first single released. I want to say it might have been in the spring of early part of 1982, because we did our early Freeze Your Butt Off winter Western Canadian tour, which was my first big arena tour with Streetheart in 1982. We had Aldo Nova opening up for it. It was a great tour. The band was in really good shape then. We had this great record, and we had, and I want to say that it was there, but I can't remember for sure, but I have my memory, my selective memory tells me that I'm riding in a car somewhere in Eastern Canada, and there it is on the radio. And it's just because we would listen to the radio as we were driving, listening to the top 20 countdown, waiting for us to get in. And I think we finally broke into the top 10.
Right.
I think that What Kind of Love Is This probably went nationally. I think to number 9. So officially we got into the top 10 with that one, which is real nice.
Amazing. Amazing. And so Jeff, what was the writing process like for some of these amazing songs? Is it a collective effort, or how does that happen?
Well, when I joined the band, one of the first things that we did, like I joined the band in the spring of 1981. So I'm celebrating my 40th year with Streetheart. A big shout out to Dave Sanderson and Winnipeg Free Press for that lovely article last month. But what we did is that we would gather every day at Kenny's house, his apartment, where him and Bob lived, and Daryl and Kenny and Spider and myself. We'd sit around Kenny's little kitchen table and we'd toss out ideas. We'd come up, we'd have a little bit. I mean, it was at that little table that songs like What Kind of Love Is This, Look in Your Eyes, Miss Plaza Suite, One More Time were written. We also wrote songs at our rehearsal studio, but the profound memory for me is sitting around Kenny's little kitchen table, writing the songs, little pads of paper and pencils, and Spider had his cassette deck, and we'd record raw versions of songs. And that's the way you write, and you do it every day. A craft, right. Songwriting craft is about getting at it. One of the greatest statements I had, I had a lunch with a friend of mine, Jim Balance, who is one of the Canadian songwriters. Anybody who knows Bryan Adams knows who Jim Balance is. And I was sort of going, Jim, so what was the secret for you guys? And he said, well, the secret is, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 15 years.
Exactly.
You have to make that kind of commitment and that time for us in Streetheart. We were committed every day. We wrote every day. We got together. It was typically around noon, and we wrote from noon till dinner time. And we did it every day. And then we go out on the road and we test songs and we try them out, and then we come back and we change them. We work on the arrangements, and that's how you do it. That's song craft is really about hard work. Craft is a nice word for hard work.
Right. And I love, Jeff, that you're explaining like the old school, like that's the old school way to learn is to literally just sit down and hang out, on a consistent daily, regular basis. And I relate to that. I remember, learning songs and, hitting the play button and then scribbling out a few lyrics and then hitting and I love that old school. And, Jeff, not many bands could cover a song and have it go gold. And of course, I'm referring to the Streetheart version of Under My Thumb. And I'm just curious, what was the decision-making process in the choice to cover that particular song?
In the band. I mean, I know some stuff, but I have full authority to say exactly how it was. But the one thing I will say, and that both Daryl and talked to me about, is that Kenny had a great sense of hearing a song and being able to find a hit. He did that with Witness, and he did that with Streetheart. He'd find a song that he loved, and Kenny, being the type of he was, he could take ownership of a song, and by that, it was like he wrote it. And of course, all the players in Streetheart were so good. They played it like they wrote it. I think Under My Thumb, if memory serves me, it was one of the songs that Streetheart played in the clubs in the early days because they only had so many original songs and they had to play it. And Under My Thumb was one of those songs that they played. And it grew into the song that it was because they would jam it and they'd extend it and play. And Under My Thumb was recorded after the band had recorded their second Under Heaven Over Hell. They recorded it, exploded. I mean, went Canada was watching this become that Warner Music, when they repressed, when they continued to press Under Heaven Over Hell, they took off a song that originally was on the album called Storyteller and put Under My Thumb on it, just to kind of boost sales, because it was this great song and it was hopefully going to help the band break into the US market. Right. It didn't really happen, but there's a number of reasons behind that, but that's their business to talk about that stuff. We'll talk about the music. I mean, I remember hearing that and just thought, I mean, the word is, even the Stones, they've heard it. They said, wow, it's better than us,
Wow.
I mean, they did
it is.
And I would have to agree. I can say that I didn't play on it. I played it probably more than John Hannah, who did a wonderful job on the recording. But I think that it's one of those rare covers that actually outdoes the original. I mean, I know there are purists that loves the Rolling Stones version, and I get that. But as a fan, I say that the Streetheart version is superior to the Rolling Stones version.
100%. I prefer the Streetheart version, and but you were Streetheart successfully covered a couple of tunes too. Tin Soldier, Here Comes the Night. I'm curious, Jeff, what is the one Streetheart song that you never get tired of performing?
There's a lot, but I've gone record many times saying this is absolutely my favorite Streetheart song, and one that I love to play every night. We typically open the night with it, and it's just such a powerful start. As soon as we hit the downbeat on that first chord, I'm there. I'm in it. I feel like the luckiest guy on the planet, because I'm a fan getting to play in a band that I loved and getting to help continue to keep delivering the good message of Streetheart to all our great fans.
Right. Life Legacy Music. Speaking of Life Legacy Music, I'd like to talk a little bit about the double album that was released in 2019. Okay. And just a note, fans, you can Life Music Legacy, www.streetheart.ca. The site is at the bottom of the screen scrolling along. You can grab that album there, and as well as a lot of really cool merchandise. So what was the decision behind putting out? I mean, it's a colossal collection of every hit. And it also has Kenny's last recording of a song that has not been released previously.
Yes. Life Legacy Music was we have Universal Music Canada to thank for that. Warren Stewart and everyone at Universal Music were very instrumental in opening the door to the concept of doing this record, and they gave us an enormous amount of freedom. They gave us an enormous amount of input. We were allowed to write all the liner notes, select photos, choose the songs. All the tracks wonderfully remastered, and I think that and they did a very classy double album open up, like the old days. We open up the record and you could read all the liner notes on the inside, and I think it was a really a wonderful product. And we had this song that Nature's Way by a band called Spirit that was recorded in 1970. It was a song that I played it and was playing it on stage, just kind of going through the number. This is years ago. And Kenny come up and says, "Oh, you like that song? I love that song." And I just looked at him and said, "We should record this someday." So, I started to record it. I want to say we probably started on this maybe 2014, 2015. I think I did some rough tracks, sent it off to Kenny. He did some vocals and sent them back to me. Him and Daryl went into the studio and did some vocals. And we never really kind of got around to sort of getting it out or finishing it. I mean, we just kind of got busy with life. Kenny's health became a primary concern. He had to put so much time into just, getting the strength to go out there and play again. And we were doing everything we could to make sure that he could, that he enjoyed himself and had a, you know, and could travel. And because the fans still loved him and he wanted desperately to play, and he just gave 100% of everything he had until he didn't have anything left to give. So we had Nature's Way kind of sitting in the can. And by that time I had already sent the track off to Spider, who played an amazing bass track on it. And really, he just kind of, as you know, as all players have skill, they assert for their better, and he just turned it into something else. So I mean, basically, we had what was the last Streetheart recording that there would ever be. So we worked really hard with we worked really hard with Kenny's vocal and got that up to a place that he would be proud of. And I hope that somewhere down there he's smiling, going, "Nice job, guys. Well done on that." You know, I think he sings it beautifully. He sounds like everything that he was. You know, he sounds fragile and thoughtful, and you can feel so much of the humanity when he sings that song. And I'm so grateful that we had a chance to put this on the record, and that Universal Music was so they were so positive about including that. They said this has to go on this collection. So that's what makes the Life Legacy music so special. Is I mean, all these great songs, but also that track with Kenny Shields doing a wonderful job.
I agree. I think it's actually no coincidence that there was that one song left, you know, for us to enjoy after Kenny's passing. And the double album, it's amazing, and it comes with a little booklet, guys. So you know, I'm sure you get asked a lot of questions. You know, how did this song come to fruition? What is this song about? What's the backstory? And so it comes with a little booklet that tells everybody the backstory to the song. So yeah, you're going to want to check that out, everybody. www.streetheart.ca. There's just so many cool merchandise. Everything Streetheart is at that site. And so Life on the Road, Jeff, it's you know, I did a show a while back, Crazy Road Stories, and it was truly one of the most I've ever had on a show, and musicians from all over the country, a lot of musicians that you know sent in stories. And I'm wondering, is there a particular experience on the road that stands out for you as, you know, specifically crazy or wacky or unbelievable, or that you can share with us on the air?
None that I can share in the air. No. I mean, you know, I mean, all cheekiness aside, I mean, it's been an amazing. I've had an amazing, wonderful, crazy life. I'm so grateful for it all. I think one of my favorite memories was playing with Jimmy Barnes. We're in Europe. This is 1995, and the last show of our summer was supposed to be the last show of our summer. Was being on the bill with the Rolling Stones. There was the Stones, Gary Moore, Jimmy Barnes, us, and Big Country. Well, Gary Moore couldn't make the show. He got sick. I don't know what the details were there, but he wasn't there. So we got the opening. We got to go on before the Stones, which we were pretty excited about. So we were in Stuttgart, Germany, outdoor show. I want to say they talk about 90,000 people in attendance. I have a few photos that some of my friends from Europe sent to me, and you can tell that it's a gigantic crowd, one of the biggest we had ever played for. And we do our set, and we're about three songs into our set, and I look over at the monitor desk, and there's Mick Jagger standing there watching us play. And I'm like, and then I go, I'm looking at Jimmy, he's like, oh. And then I look on the other side, and Keith Richards is standing on the other side watching us play. Well, I guess apparently the story was that their tour manager, a couple songs into our set, he goes back into their backstage room and says, guys, you need to come out and see this band. This is the best opening act we've had for 10 years. You need to come out and see these guys. Wow. So they came out and saw us play. So just being on this, playing for, and German rock and roll fans are amazing. I mean, they love music. They're rock and roll aficionados, and they really let you know when they love what you do. They let you know when they don't like it, but they let you know when they love you. And it was an amazing afternoon. And after that show, the Stones management offered us the rest of the shows in Germany.
Wow.
Because go over the day I was going to fly over to Vancouver to join up to do some Loverboy. Before they asked by their manager at that time, Lou Blair, could I come over and do some show fill in for Paul Dean for about 6 weeks? And to Jimmy about that, he said, yeah, we're taking a break. I'm going to go on vacation with my family. No problem. And then of course they come and, we're just like, Jimmy was white, like, oh, we just got offered, half a dozen more dates with the Stones. But, Jimmy, I mean, just to show you what kind of a quality of a person Jimmy Barnes is, he said, Jeff, a deal is a deal. You have to go do these shows with Loverboy. I want to do these Rolling Stone shows, and so did I. But he said, you have to go do that. You've given them your word. And he said, you have to go. So, I mean, what a man. Jimmy Barnes is like, he's the real deal, and he's all class. And I'm so grateful to have worked with him. But
that's integrity. That's integrity, Jeff. Hey, that is integrity. And what an admirable trait.
Taught me a lot about integrity. My time with Jimmy Barnes taught me a lot. One of them was about having integrity. And if anybody that I know that I've been lucky enough to work with, Jimmy Barnes is right at the top of the heap.
Right. And, integrity is an important thing. And, I will say this, Jeff Neill, you are a man of integrity. And I know this because I like to sort of read between the lines and find out little nuances and characteristics and personality traits about people. And one thing I noticed about you that really, really impressed me is, so normally when my guests and I are connecting, I ask them to send pictures for promotional purposes that they choose, otherwise I creep their Facebook page. And so you sent me 4 or 5 pictures, Jeff. And what I was really impressed with is that every single one that you sent had the photo credit attached. Mm-hmm. And as I went on to do my homework and research, I thought every time that you post a picture, regardless of what it is, you take the time to give a photo cred and give a shout out. And even if you're posting a picture that you don't know who took the photo, you're still acknowledging, I'm sorry, I don't know who the photographer this is, but thank you for the beautiful, photo. And to me, that is such a sign of being a solid human. That really impressed me when I saw that.
Well, thanks for that. We have so many friends, so many talented friends that shoot wonderful photos of us, all of our colleagues. They do it for free. They do it out of love and joy. If we can't, and you have to treat they're artists just the same as we are. And
Right.
It was something I learned from my parents, and it's not that profound, but treat others as you'd like to be treated yourself. I have so much respect for all the photographer friends that I have and what they do. At the very least, I like to honor them by acknowledging who they are and what they do. And that doesn't happen once. That happens every time. That's just I think that's part of being, that's a professional courtesy that I always appreciate when it's extended towards me. It's one that I try whenever possible to do myself.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And Jeff, speaking of integrity, I have a quick little road story for you here, because it tells about how I actually met Kenny back in the 90s. A funny story, my band was playing in a little Alberta town called Westlock. And of course, as you mentioned, it was back in the days when it was 6 nights a week. And I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, and the bar manager comes up to us and he says, guys, I have a little bit of bad news for you. He said, you're not going to play Saturday night. And we were kind of thinking, he goes, but what's happening? We're having a great week. We couldn't figure it out. He said, you're not going to play Saturday night, but you'll get paid for the week, and I'm going to give you a bar tab, and you can keep your accommodations. We just happened to get another band, and it was kind of a routing thing, so we're going to bring them in. And we're slightly offended, and so I said, well, who's the band? And he says, well, it's Streetheart. And I was like, wait a minute here, let me get this straight. So we get the night off, which, and as you know, being on the road, you don't ever get an opportunity to see anyone else play or do anything else. We're going to get
Right.
the night off. We're going to be paid. We're going to get a bar tab, and we get front row seats to one of our idols,
Hmm.
Streetheart. And at that time, we were covering under my thumb the Streetheart version, and in my mind, I was thinking, we covered Streetheart last night, and on Saturday, Streetheart's going to be on the same stage that I was on all week, and it was just one of the best experiences of my life. And that's how I met Kenny, and that was back, I think that was '94. And that's how I first met Kenny. And speaking of humanity and grace and dignity, which is what the conversation is here, is the next day there was a group of us having breakfast in the hotel restaurant, and there was this single mother sitting across from her. She had a couple of kids, and she was very young, and the kids are acting up and they're freaking out, and it was like a scene out of that movie Falling Down. Like you could just see her about to crack, and she gets up to take one of the little kids to the bathroom, and one of the kids is having a meltdown. The one she's holding spills the box of Smarties that she had just bought him. And Kenny jumps up from the table and he runs over. He picks up all the Smarties. He pats the girl on the back. He buys a brand new box of Smarties, and then he bought their breakfast.
Mhm.
And I thought, and just a testament, to the class that Kenny was, and the class that you obviously are. And I'm really prone to saying, oh, it's a Canadian thing, but it's not that. It's a Jeff Neill thing, and it's a Kenny Shields thing, and what a great quality to have. So Jeff, my question to you is, when in 2017, when Kenny's health took a turn, and we lose Kenny, is there ever a time when you're thinking that this is it for Streetheart?
Of course. I mean, that's something that typically comes to mind right away. We didn't. I mean, Kenny was really had a number of health issues for a number of years before that. I mean, he worked, as I talked about earlier. He worked very hard trying to stay as healthy as he possibly could so that he could travel and could sing. And I mean, in spite of going through so much stuff, amazingly, his voice just stayed intact. I mean, he had a wonderful singing voice, right, forever. It's just like, what a wonderful. We played our last show on Canada Day in Sherwood Park, just a subdivision of Edmonton, in 2017, and Kenny's health had been really declining for the past number of months, and he went straight to the hospital. We flew back to Winnipeg the next day, and he went straight in to the hospital, and he never came out. And we lost him on the 21st of July of 2017. We were supposed to play Shaw Park here in Winnipeg at the end of August. When Kenny went into the hospital, that show turned into a benefit show for Kenny. We were going to raise money. We were, Sam Cates and all his team, they decided, no, we're going to go ahead with the show and let's do it as a benefit for Kenny. We'll raise money to help him get back to health and help him through a very difficult time. And we didn't get to that. We lost him a few weeks later. And then Sam said, then we started talking about the tribute show and we started working out how we could do this. We started talking to all the singers that were on the show, a couple of local singers as well, great local singers here, Lisa Windsor, one of Kenny's dear friends, Donnie Peranto, was going to join us, Chris Burke Gaffney, Paul McNair, and the Honeymoon Suite guys. They all offered to sit in one of the songs with us. And one of the wonderful things was Spider Seneve, who was out with Loverboy at the time, and Spider has been with Loverboy since the year 2000 when we lost Scott Smith. We talked to the guys in Loverboy about this, and they all said, well, we're coming. You know, I mean, Paul and Matthew, because they're Streetheart founding members of Streetheart. I mean, they're very close to Kenny. And Mike Reno said, "Well, I'm coming too. I love Kenny. I want to be there." So so Mike and Catherine St. Germain and Matthew Fournette and Paul Dean and Spider Seneve, in the middle of their tour, on their own dime, came to Winnipeg to pay their respects musically for Kenny, for their dear friend. And like so many of us, and we were joined by 8,000 of Kenny's closest friends, who came to share that night with us. And it was a wonderful night. It was a beautiful night. I mean, there was so much that went into it, getting ready for the logistics. By the time I hit the stage, I couldn't remember what to play, how to talk, was babbling on like a complete but I was just kind of emotionally kind of frazzled. I mean, it was quite a time, when you look back at it. It's a lot of loss to have to deal with. So to answer your question, we didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't really even talk about anything until towards the end of the year, because we did a one of was a big CD and record sale that they do here twice annually, called the Rock and Richards CD and record sale. Sadly, we lost Richard last year, and him and his dear friend Alex Reed. They invited us to the show to come, to sign some autographs and just sort of talk. And fans, every fan came up to us and they said, and they were extending their condolences and saying how much they miss Kenny. And it was really nice. And one of the things they said, we love Kenny, we miss him, but please don't stop playing. Please, you guys, You got to keep music alive. You got to keep Kenny's legacy alive. And that's just how we keep his legacy alive. I mean, had we stopped playing and just disappeared, I mean, we wouldn't be here today, obviously. But we started talking about, how could we do this? How could we do it in a way that would respect the legacy of this band, primarily Kenny, who we had just lost, but every member of this band. And when I think of Streetheart, it's 9. There's 9 individuals that have been in that band. I'm lucky to have been one of those 9 people. And Paul McNair did such a wonderful job at Kenny's tribute back in 2017. And he was a friend of ours, and he was a really good guy. And he was a student of the band, and he was a student of Kenny's. He was one of the kids that grew up being influenced by Kenny. I mean, how could you not be if you were a singer in Winnipeg in the 80s? So, and we started talking to Paul, and he certainly has the pipes to be able to, because the truth is, we could never replace Kenny. You don't replace someone like Kenny Shields. What we needed was a great singer who could sing a very difficult catalog of songs that not many singers could sing night after night after night. And Paul McNair just happens to be that person. And I think, and the fans were so welcoming and have continued to be so welcoming of him. Our fans get it. They know. I mean, they love Kenny, but I know the appreciation that they have. Just when they watch Paul, they see that here's a man that knows the size of the shoes that he stepped into it, and he does it with class, and he does it with confidence, and a boatload of talent. And we're really, and he's a great guy, and we're just very lucky to have him on board with us to continue on this legacy of this great band that I'm so proud to be part of.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more, Jeff. I couldn't. Man, like finding Paul, he just knocks it out of the park. He's just incredibly talented. And of course, he was last week, and getting a lot of cool comments in, and there's a lot of people watching right now. When you were just sharing now a little bit about the Kenny years, Perry Boyko, who's a good friend of the show here, says, "I'm getting tears in my eyes just hearing this. Very proud of you, Jeff Neill." Ian Morris, good friend of mine, talented local bass player, he says, "Never have I, as a kid, ever asked a band to autograph an album. And the band sat down at my table and chat. And apparently, Streetheart was one of those bands that, as a kid, he asked to autograph the album. And he says the entire band sat down and chatted with him. And that's, to me, is the sign of a true rock star. To acknowledge the fans, and your fans are definitely die hard. They are die hard, and there's a couple of questions being asked, Jeff. And
Okay.
this was a question that I asked Paul too, but I think it's one of the best questions ever. And so I'll pose that to you now. So, Jeff, what advice would you offer your 18-year-old self?
Well, it's funny because I just sort of posted about this the other day, and it was a great post because I got so many responses from everybody else sharing their own thoughts. But I think if I had, I would say to myself is, don't dumb down. Stay true to yourself. Obviously, I mean, these are not profound things. These are just, these are the things that I think about. And when people show you who they are, this is the one that I love. Is when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I think when we're young, we tend to give people too many chances. A lot of it, I mean, and that can be good too. When people show you the goodness, believe them. But when people show you something that might be harmful to you or whatever that is, believe them, because we can make a mistake, but sometimes when it's once is a mistake, twice is a tendency. It's a personality trait or something.
Right.
It's. I thought that'd be an easier question to answer. What would I say to myself? But I think that we all have self-doubt, and I think that the music industry is very, very difficult. I mean, it's a hard industry, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I've had some great moments. I've had some very, very difficult times in my life too. I choose not to dwell on them. I choose to not make myself a victim, but to accept my role and when things go wrong, and to realize that that
Right.
it's not that someone took advantage of me, but that I allowed them to do that. And if I think that one of the first steps to getting power is to accept your role and when things go wrong, and when you can do that, then you can start taking credit for things when they start to go right.
I agree, Jeff. I'm a huge fan of accountability. A huge fan of accountability. And so I think a lot of your advice you're giving is probably something I would have said to my 18-year-old self as well, along with, you know what, it's going to be okay. If I had one line that I could have said to myself, it would have been, you know what, you're going to be okay, kid. It's always going to be okay, because current shows that it always is.
Mm-hmm.
And especially during these trying times. And people are just loving this interview. I want to give a shout out to Eva Smith, who is such a huge supporter of this show, and she just supports all the Canadian music. And hi, Eva. And she says, what an emotionally charged is such an empathetic human being. And I'm in tears. Great show. Jeff and Streetheart has greatly influenced my 21-year-old son. Next generation fan. That's from Rick Nelson. And there's just tons of comments coming in. So I just a couple of questions, Jeff, because I know you probably have to get going here. So if you could, effectively prophesize your future with a magic wand, what would it look like for you in Streetheart and for you personally?
Well, I mean, 2020 was a very profound year, not only for myself, but for all of us, of course. We don't really need to get into it because we're all going through the pandemic together. But for me, it definitely accelerated what I was sort of doing, which was moving here. My gal Renata, as many of you know, lives here, and the band is all here. And Winnipeg is an amazing rock and roll city still.
For sure.
We had the last number of years have been very, very difficult, just in the fact that we lost a lot of shows with Kenny's health, and then we lost Kenny. We didn't play for almost 2 years. And then we started to get back on our feet in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and everything stopped for us on March 13th. And that basically said, Jeff, the writing is on the wall. So, I packed up my house, and I basically this is almost a year to this day. It was about the 25th that I arrived in Winnipeg and started my new life here. And luckily enough, because we have I have a nice big space. Daryl Gutal and Spider Sineve and myself were able to safely work together, and we've done a lot of writing over the past year. We've written somewhere in the neighborhood of between 60 and 70 new songs in the past year.
Wow.
Which and basically, as I was talking about earlier in this interview, it was basically us sitting in a very distant circle, exchanging ideas, sitting around with acoustic guitars and a tape recorder, my computer, laptop, recording, documenting all these songs and writing raw songs, not embellishing them with drums and drum machines and stuff, but just raw songs, like the way songwriters write songs: lyrics, chord changes, melody. And so we have all these songs documented, which we are now going back and looking at and starting to demo up to turn them into going, okay, this is here we are. This is Streetheart as we stand right now in 2021. We've been bringing Paul in with us now. He's been starting to record with us, and he's doing a great job. He's just, he's so good to work with. He's so gracious. He takes direction. He listens. He has great ideas himself. And we're just enjoying the process of working with him. And we feel very grateful for that. And we're looking forward to sharing some of that music real soon. Hopefully we're going to be able to get back to playing. But two things need to be in place for us. And that is safety for everyone. And not only the bands and the audience, but also the crews, our crew, the house crews. Everybody has to be safe. And secondly, the quality has to be there, the quality of experience, quality that our fans deserve.
Right.
We need it to be as high as we can possibly have it, because our fans deserve nothing but the very best forward that we can put forward.
I agree, Jeff. I think you just made a ton of people happy. You thought that we could, that when this is all over, we're going to hear some new Streetheart. We're going to get to see you guys tour again. That makes my heart happy, and I know it makes a lot of the viewers watching today happy, and we certainly look forward to that. You are a delightful human, Jeff Neill. You are welcome to come back here absolutely anytime.
I'm not doing anything tomorrow, Kelly.
What do you have your people call my people?
I have a session tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. We just want to thank you and Paul and Spider and Daryl and Dave, continuing life, legacy, music. We're proud that you're Canadian. We're proud to think that you're ours. And I just can't thank you enough for being here, Jeff, and take care, and we will certainly see you soon.
Kelly, thank you so much for that. And again, I just want to give a big shout out to all of our fans. Thank you. Thank you for being with us for so many years, for being so supportive. We have leaned on each and every one of you throughout the years. You have made us what we are. And we want to continue that. And we're looking forward to getting back out there and seeing y'all play. And I know on behalf of all the guys, we love you all, and we wish you and all your loved ones nothing but the very best. And we're looking forward to get out there and rocking y'all real soon.
Right on. Thank you so much. Thank Jeff Neill from Streetheart, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. What a great show. We will see you next Sunday, everybody. Please stay safe and sane. And until we see you, then take care of each other. Bye-bye.